This week, we answer the question why Australian Shiraz is called Shiraz. G'day everybody, my name's Phil and welcome to 52 Wine Facts, a show helping you become the wine snob that you always wish you were, presented by Glenguin Estate. Let's cut right into it. Why is Australian Shiraz called Shiraz? Now this question was prompted by my reading of a wine list in a restaurant that will go unnamed in Sydney in Australia. One statement on their wine list really made me realise how little people know about why Australian Shiraz is called Shiraz. Obviously, Shiraz is made with the Syrah grape, commonly called Shiraz in Australia, but originates from France. Was brought over by a guy called James Busby, who brought the first vines over to Australia in and around the late 1820s, early 1830s, depending on where your source is or depending on what date you get, but it's anywhere from 1828 to 1832. James came to Australia quite earlier than that, around 1824, 1825, thought that the colony of New South Wales would be prime real estate for viticulture, and then went back to Europe, back to Spain and France, and toured nurseries. Ended up getting around 600 different varieties from the nurseries of Spain and France. The interesting thing about the Syrah grape was it was the only variety that he struggled to find decent cutting material for. So to get Syrah cuttings, he actually went to the spiritual home of Syrah, the Hill of Hermitage, obtained cuttings from there and then brought them over to Australia. Planted them in a couple of locations in Sydney, as well as the first planting outside of Sydney in the colony, in a place called the Hunter Valley, which is considered one of the premier Shiraz growing regions in Australia. And he called his vineyard Kirkton. Is located just outside of a town called Branxton, north of the Hunter River. And from there, the story gets a little bit muddled, but what we do know for sure is that Shiraz is called Shiraz because it was originally believed that Syrah was actually a grape of Persian origin near the town of Shiraz in modern day Iran. DNA testing has since proven that to be completely false, but for whatever reason, Shiraz has stuck. Australian Shiraz is probably best known globally due to the big fruity numbers that come out of the McLaren Vale or the Barossa Valley in South Australia. However, there's probably about 13 or 14 different interpretations of Shiraz if you look at Australia as a whole, from the big fruity numbers from South Australia to a little bit more elegant and refined in the Hunter Valley to proper cool climate from around the Canberra district, Mornington and Yarra Valley, and all across through to Western Australia. And so when you look at Shiraz across Australia, it's a little bit disingenuous to say that they are just big fruity bold wines. They can be elegant, they can be delicate, particularly the cooler climate where you start to get a little bit of pepper, a little bit of spice through it. And the Hunter, you tend to get a little bit more body than the cooler climate variety, but not as fruit driven as the South Australian model. And of course, as we mentioned, South Australia tends to be that big fruity, high alcohol, high tannin, liberal use of oak, wines that certainly have their place in the global wine landscape. What we're also starting to see across Australia is the influx of wines that are made from the Shiraz grapes, however they're called Syrah. This tends to be a nod to that Northern Rhone style, sometimes blended with a small amount of Viognier, sometimes not. Like most things in life, you should never judge a book by its cover. If you see Shiraz on a label, pay close attention to the region that it's from. It may not be that big fruity style that you may be used to. It could easily be something properly cool climate, 12.5%, 13%, with a bit of spice and a bit of balance to it. Shiraz in Australia covers the entire gamut of price points, from the cheap $5 Australian a bottle through to the flagship wine that everybody knows and loves, Penfolds Grange, Henschke Hill of Grace, looking at the Hunter Valley, Broken Woods Graveyard Shiraz. There's a lot of different styles and there's a lot of different price points. Not all Shirazes are created equal, it's safe to say. Look, that's all for this week. Our t-shirts, if you're interested, they come from an Etsy store called Wine Tees. We'll link it up in the description below. There'll be more wine facts coming at you next week. If there's something about wine that you don't know that you want to know more about, let us know in the comments below, and over the course of the next 12 months, we'll try to get to it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.